What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to our series on compassion. If you haven't checked out my mom's video from last week, go ahead and hit it. But today I'm going to be talking to you about the parable of the prodigal son. I love this parable because I'm a straight up pastor's kid and I have experienced both sides of the prodigal son in terms of the son. I've been the prodigal who runs away. I've also been the very haughty and self-righteous son who stayed. And so I just want to give us a little background into this parable. There's a younger son and an older son, and the younger son is just about done with his father. He says, "Give me your money that you're going to give me when you die, and I'm going to head out, do my own thing." And it breaks the father's heart. He gives the money to the son. The son goes off, squanders it, drinking, drugs, prostitution, whatever the equivalent is back in those days. But he wastes all the money. And then he finds himself in the pig pens. And let's think about the cultural implications of that. We're talking to a chiefly Jewish audience, and they don't vibe with pigs. They're very dirty, they're unclean. And so this son has sunk into the lowest possible rung of society. He's living among the pigs, feeding them. And the son says, "I need to go back to my father's house and I can at least be a servant," because there they had food. And he can't even eat the food that he's supposed to give the pigs. How crazy is that? I think that's just disgusting. I would have eaten the pig's food anyway.
You do what you have to do. You do what you have to do.
But he comes home. And we read in Luke 15, and man, this is so powerful. And we're talking about compassion. We're talking about the love of God that overflows. We're talking about something that we don't deserve, receiving the love of God, sitting in the goodness of God, and how he goes out of his way to reach us. And we read in Luke 15:17, he comes to his senses, and in Luke 18, "I will set out, go to my father, and say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired laborers.'" And sometimes we get in this mindset with the Lord, especially when we sink into sin. Believe it or not, you're human. You will sink into sin. And you think, "I'm no longer worthy to be called a son, a daughter of God. But you know what? I'll work really hard for him, and maybe he'll forgive me a little bit. I'll work really hard for him. I'll give all my money to the church. I'll volunteer every Sunday. I'll work myself to the bone. And maybe then God will forgive me. God will take pity on me." And in verse 20, the son goes out, and it says, "While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called a son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened calf. Slaughter it. Let's eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' And they began to celebrate." It's important to understand that God calls you his son, his daughter. And when you are not close with the Lord, when you are not around him, he's not keeping track of every day that you spent living in sin. He's not keeping track of every bad decision that you made. When you come back to him, he says, "You were dead, now you're alive. You were lost, now you're found." And his compassion overflows for you. While you're still far off, he runs out and gets you. And I love this because it's not only the compassion of the father, right? The father comes and brings the son in, but he tells his people, the community, "Let's celebrate that my son was lost and now he's found." And are we representing the compassion of the Father well in our community, in our churches? Because when we see somebody who's in drug addiction, somebody who's maybe living an immoral sexual lifestyle, and they come into our churches, are we celebrating that? Are we taking compassion on people who are still in sin? Are we welcoming them in, going the extra mile, and celebrating with the Lord? They were dead and now they're alive. They were lost and now they're found. And it's this opportunity to enter into a different kind of compassion as a community. We get to tap into the Father's heart. We get to tap into what he's doing in their lives. And this is an honor. It is an honor for us to partner with the Lord in what he's doing in other people's lives. So I want you to think about your own mindset. I want you to think about how you would respond. A drug addict walks into your church. Do you get scared or do you get excited? Because if we're going to have compassion on those who have fallen or who are dead and are now alive, we need to celebrate with them. We need to join the Father's heart. And maybe check your own heart. Is there a place in your heart that is not filled with the compassion of God because you haven't allowed him to love you? Compassion is an overflowing. You don't have to love people out of your own volition. A lot of times we want to love people well and it costs us something. And that's one way of looking at it. But the other way is when I am completely and fully loved by the Lord, when I am filled with his love and compassion, when every part of my heart, every essence of my being is saturated in the love of God, it's an overflowing from that point. And so is there an area of your heart that you're not allowing the Lord to access, to love that part of you, to get in the nitty-gritty, to get all down in and truly love you and love through you? Thank you for joining us today. It was my honor to get to speak with you about compassion. Go ahead and give us a like, a comment, and in the comment section, tell us an area where God has taught you to be loved by him. Because you too were dead and now you're alive. You were lost and now you're found. And let's celebrate our stories. We love you so much and we're so excited to see what God is doing in your life. See you next week.